Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast for episode number 87, which we're going to talk about whether or not we all have a predetermined date to die. Is that real? Have you heard people say that before? When it's your time to go, you go, and not before or until. I had a grandpa used to say that to me. When it's your time, it's your time. But is that true or not? You know, I've been thinking about this recently because there is somebody close to me that's struggling medically. And I grew up seeing some pretty amazing things. Um, as many of you know, my father was in an accident when he was burned. Over three-fourths of his body was burned third degree. 77% of his body, to be precise. And he was not supposed to live. And he did. Doctors could not figure it out. They told me to my face, even as a child, I heard them say the terms medical miracle. And that same man, once he was healed, my father actually kept all his limbs, which is very rare if you know anything about burn victims, especially that severe. My dad did not get his arms, legs, feet, fingers, or hands cut off. They were quite scarred up, but my mother refused to sign the documents to amputate. They wanted to amputate his left arm, but she said, until I can talk to him, I'm not signing the papers. And thank God she did, because he regained full use of his left arm and his left hand, and again had a miraculous comeback to the point that he could actually do one of his great passions in his life. He could eventually ride a motorcycle, which he did. He rode it. He actually got to go to Sturgis, which was a thing that he wanted to do his whole life, and he was able to do it, and he had a blast doing it, and it was cool. You know, I had a biker for a father, which is awesome because many of my uncles were bikers, and I kind of grew up around that community. You know, 1% rallies are not something that strikes fear in my heart. It's actually quite comfortable. In a lot of ways, those are my people and always will be. But yeah, I mean, the reason I bring that up is because he also was in a horrific motorcycle accident where he had literally drove off the road going over 70 miles an hour and flew off his motorcycle, and he slammed into one of the big columns that hold up a bridge. He was on an underpass, and you know, he broke. I always remember these numbers because they just said it so many times. It just gets ingrained in your fucking head. When I was in high school when this happened, and I was told he broke 17 bones on 32 places. And he did. And he had an external fixator on the outside of his leg because he got severe staph infection, and he lived. He lived through all of it. And it just blew my mind that he did. And I recently watched this. Stanley's Superhumans was on late one night. It just came on one of these channels. It might even have been a YouTube recommended video about this person that was frozen in water for 19 minutes without a heartbeat and somehow came back to life. And then there's my favorite singer of all time, Mr. Phil Anselmo, who overdosed on heroin twice and was medically dead, flatlined twice, and came back to life. The same thing happened to Nikki Sixx of Motley Crue. He came back to life. And in the musical world, there's all kinds of stories of this, of, you know, guys doing enough drugs to kill a rhinoceros, and somehow, you know, they flatline, but then come back to life. So is that true? Is there a determined date in which our life will end? And if there is, what would that purpose be? Do you believe that we have an amount of things that we have to accomplish by that date? Um, is it a predetermined date that is set by whoever you believe or conceive to be God? Um, and what is the value of that date? I've always looked at the value of death. Death makes life valuable, right? If you knew you could live forever, who would be in a hurry to do shit? You know? If I knew I had forever, why would I be inspired to do anything? Why would I want to accomplish my hopes and my dreams? Uh, believe me, I don't like thinking about this, guys. The only time I ever really think about death per se is when somebody close to me is struggling, and I know that's an imminent possibility that I'm going to have to think about long and hard real soon. The first time that death actually hit me as something permanent, and I had a real adult understanding of it, believe it or not, it was when Capone, my bulldog, passed away. No, I had lost people that I care about without question. But I've said this before, there was something about that little bulldog that was my soulmate. And I just he loved me, and I attached him to everything that I did. When I would edit, he would be at my feet with his big meaty head, laying on my feet. If I went to the bathroom, he would go to the bathroom with me just to walk with me. If I laid down on the couch, he was laying on me with both his arms on me. He loved to just bury his head right below my chin. And when he slept, he made this this like doggy purr that provided me with the greatest sleep I've ever got. That dog literally slept between Laura and I in the bed every night. And then one day I wake up, I take a shower, and I come out of the bathroom, and he's by my seat. And I realized right away, well, that's weird. He didn't, because he used to just literally sit outside the shower and wait for me. And I thought to myself, that's really weird. He wasn't in, the bathroom by the shower. And I look over, and he just made a sound that I had never heard before. And it's amazing. You could get so close to your dogs and your animals that you know what every last sound means. I knew what his sounds meant for I want to eat, I want to go outside and pee, I got to go outside and poop, I want to snuggle, I want to go on the bed, I want to play. Like, I knew what all his sounds. He had different barks. I knew what an urgent bark was. I knew what a protective bark was. I knew what his growl meant. I knew when I was playing with him if I was pushing him too hard by the sounds he would make. And he just made this unbelievable sound that was so foreign. And he stared at me, and he just lowered his head, and he slowly squatted down, what I call short-legging it. Bulldogs have this really cute way of extending their little nubby arms and legs. And he just laid down and looked up at me and just made this sound. It was like this long whine that was very low. Just this And I knew right away, this is not good. I walked over, leaned down, I was like, buddy? And bulldogs have really long tongues. At least Capone had an exceptionally long tongue. And his tongue's hanging out of his mouth. And I'm like, buddy. And I put my finger down on his tongue, and his tongue is ice cold. And once again, if you know anything about any living creature, a fever you can work with. When the inside of the body starts getting incredibly cold, usually that means organs aren't working. And I was terrified. I freaked out. I called Laura. I'm like, she was actually on her way to school. And I was like, you got to get home now. There's something wrong. Something with Capone, something wrong. You got to get home now. She turned around and came right back. Oh man, it was a nightmare of a day. We scooped him up. Um, I held him like you would hold a baby, in my arms. Went to the car, and I could just tell something bad had happened, something very, very bad. And Laura drove as fast as she could to our kennel. I'm sorry, not our kennel, our veterinarian. And we went inside right away. They took him right away. And they said, listen, we can already tell from his vitals something's really wrong. Um, let us do our work and, we'll update you and let you know. And I said, okay. And in my mind, I guess I was thinking he was going to be okay. Um, so I went home, and the phone calls kept coming, and they got worse and worse each time. It started out with, his heart rate's really low, um, but we're looking at him. We don't have a determination yet. The next thing I know, the next phone call is, well, we have determined that he had a heart attack, but we're trying to determine the severity of it. And I'm saying things like, well, is it possible that he had a heart attack, but he's going to live through it and he'll recover? And they're like, well, it's possible, but we just don't know yet. The next phone call comes, this valve of his heart is not working, and it's causing the other valve to work harder, and this one wall of his heart is really hard, and we discovered he had a heart disease. Until eventually the phone call came, and it was one of the weirdest things I've ever heard. They said, listen, he doesn't have long, Chad, and our advice is, that you let him go, and we put him down. And I was like, well, what is going on? And guys, I swear on my life, this is what he said. He said, well, he had a massive heart attack, but somehow the part of his heart that's working has taken over the full function of pumping blood, and it can't do it as strong as the whole heart when it's actually working how it should. And he goes, so his heart is still slowly pumping blood, but it's pumping it in reverse. Like his literally the part of his heart that was working kept working, and now it was pumping blood in the reverse fashion. And the doctor said, I've honestly never seen anything like it. And he's like, I don't, know how it's even possible, but it's really strange. But, make no mistake about it, he's suffering. And I said, so what does he have? Like 6 months, a year? And he was like, oh, Chad, no. And he was like, with the full strength of, medicine and machinery here, he's got maybe 10 to 12 hours. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah. And he was like, was he running or playing when this happened? I was like, no, he was completely comfortable. He slept all night next to Laura. I mean, he wasn't feeling well the night before. He didn't eat or drink much. I'm like, but no, he just woke up. And he's like, well, he goes, we did discover that he did have a severe heart disease, and he had it since birth. And I was just like, wow. So I said, well, I got to come see him. You cannot put him. And he said, no, we're not. You have to sign off on it. You have to be here. He's not going anywhere, but I would come down as soon as possible, because even though I gave you 12 hours, it could be, 5 minutes. So I couldn't even process it, guys. I was just like, no, this is wrong. I'm going to show up, and they're going to tell me that something miraculous happened. He's okay. He's going to be fine. I'm even telling Laura, like, well, let's see. Let's get there. Things could change. So we get there, and we sign all this paperwork, and we're waiting in the waiting room for him to show up. And they opened the door and they set him down, and he took like 3 or 4 really slow steps, and I was like, oh buddy, come here. And he just, again, just laid down and put his head right on my feet, and he just stared up with his eyes at Laura and I. And I could see on his face that he was hurting. Like, he was in such bad shape. And he was just sticking around for us. I mean, that was it. I mean, he was literally, I think his heart was, I know his heart was broke, literally and figuratively. But he was hanging around for us. And I couldn't look at that. I just could not watch him hurt. And I looked at the nurse, and I just said, we got to do this now, like right now. Just because I could not, the thought of that little animal that had, all of my heart, he had all of my heart. The thought that I would make him suffer from my own selfishness of wanting him around for me so I could feel secure and safe. I could not do it. And I said, we need to do this now. And I said, what is the procedure? And she said, well, listen, we'll give him one shot that's essentially they OD him on barbiturates and they just go to sleep. That's all it is. And I said, okay. I said, well, how long after you give him the shot before it's over? And she said, it's pretty quick. We'll give him the shot and it'll be a good, 10 seconds and he'll slowly fade away. And I looked at Laura and I just said, are you okay with this? I want to do this now. And she said, yeah. So I held his little face and he was looking up at me, and they gave him the shot, and he made, this little sound like he knew what was going on. And he just stared at me. And I just told him, if there's any justice in the universe, I will see you on the other side. And the second I knew he was gone, I had to get out of there, man. I could not handle it. So I got up and I just said, Laura, I have to go outside. I'm sorry. I can't do this. And he was gone by then. And Laura said, okay, if it's okay with you, I want to spend some time with him. And I said, of course, babe. And I could tell Laura was being strong for me. I was bawling like a baby, and she was just being very strong for me. So I went outside about, 15, 20 minutes later. Laura walked outside. And I just said to her, I can't wrap my head around this. Like, I keep thinking he's going to come running through the door. Like at any moment, he's going to come running through the door. And obviously, he never ran through the door. But what blew me away is in the weeks to come, it took me probably 3 weeks to a month before my mind kept doing this crazy thing where I would wake up and I would go to do something and I would forget that he was gone. And then it would pop into my head that he was gone. And for a few seconds, my brain would start, I would start searching for ways to bring him back. Before I would have to stop and accept that that's not going to happen. But it kept happening, where every time I would forget that he was gone, only to do something to be reminded that he was gone, for a few seconds, I would start thinking of, well, maybe if I did this or that, and it just eventually hit me what death is and the finality of it. And it just truly made me recognize how valuable life is. And that's the real beauty of death, that it gives life value. Every day that goes by, it's so easy to fall into a path and a pattern in which we think, I'll get to it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll see that old friend tomorrow. I'll call that relative tomorrow. I'll chase my dreams tomorrow. I'll start that diet tomorrow. I'll work out tomorrow. I'll, go out to dinner with my wife tomorrow. It's just so easy to put off things that matter because, either you have something else to do or life can become monotonous at times. Days can, at times, start to feel like, Groundhog Day, where it's the same process every day. And that's always what I've tried to structure my life, where that's not the case. I've always said, I don't want to know what tomorrow's going to bring. If I ever get in a situation where I know for sure what tomorrow's going to bring, then I'm on the wrong path in life. Because I like the excitement in life. I like that I work in an industry and live in a town where anything is possible and anything can happen. And that phone could ring and it could be anybody. You don't know where you'll be in a month, in a week, in a day, in an hour, But I do often wonder when I hear these stories of, young people dying. There's this documentary on Showtime about these 8 deaths of these 8 young girls. I think it's called Murder in the Bayou. It's incredible, by the way, if you guys haven't watched this. I'm 4 episodes in, and it's one of the most beautifully shot docuseries that I've ever seen. It is truly, truly awesome. But it's very sad in the sense that there's 8 women that were killed. And the police department wanted to say that it was a serial killer, and the parents don't believe that. I'll just leave it there because I don't want to ruin anything for anybody. But, I was looking at these girls and, I was thinking, if that's true, if we all have a place and time, then what would be the reason for bringing in people into the world and then having them pass away so early? I mentioned Nikki Sixx earlier. If you guys know anything about Vince Neil, the singer from Motley Crue, he lost his daughter to stomach cancer at age 4. I mean, this was a beautiful little girl. And, you got to say, well, what is the purpose of that? Now, I know I'm asking the unanswerable question here. Is there a set time that we're all supposed to die? And I know a lot of people don't like talking about death because it's scary. And I don't like talking about it typically. But what I do like is as I get older and, that day is looming, whether that's 40 years from now, 20, 10, 5, who knows when. What I do love is that it does give a greater value to each day that I am alive. It gives a greater value to the things that I do, and it gives a greater value to the time that I share and that I spend with those that I love. It's if you have a mind like mine, and you also are into conspiratorial stuff, and you take a look at, weird beliefs as to how mankind started, and who are the real fathers and mothers of humanity, and is it all just a simulation? Are we all just a part of the matrix? Or does everything truly matter? Is this a special place? I guess what I've realized is it doesn't really matter how we started. And because I'll never know what happens when it ends until it ends, the only thing that really matters is the now. The now. What did I do today? What am I going to do with my life in the next hour? Because we don't know when we're going to go. You know, whether it's predetermined or not. I would like to think that it's not. And not because you can, do everything you can to live as old as you can, because that's not my goal either. My goal is to not live to the point where I'm so old that I'm just fucking miserable, that I'm just shitting myself and I just can't get anywhere in life, and no one wants to be around me, and I'm so frail and sick all the time. Like, I don't want that. I don't want that. And I'll tell you why I don't want it, because there was a woman named Rosie who was incredibly beautiful. As beautiful of a woman as I've ever seen. And Rosie was a loyal wife to her husband. And she was a hard worker. But Rosie had her things that she enjoyed. She enjoyed smoking Pall Mall filterless cigarettes. And she did it from age 12 until she was 90 years old. She loved drinking ancient age whiskey. And she would drink my dad under the table. And she drank it until she was 90 years old. And eventually Rosie had to be moved into a care center. Where I saw her on her final days, during her final days, actually 2 days before she passed away. And she was in a bad spot. And I had never seen her like that. And I had visited her a lot throughout my life. And I loved visiting her. She always made me appreciate life. Because here was this beautiful old lady that would just welcome us with hugs and kisses and love. And every time we'd go over there, there'd be Pizza Hut waiting for us. And she'd sit down with my pops and start doing shots right away and smoking her cigarettes. And the most elegant, beautiful woman I've ever seen. So beautiful that she made smoking look beautiful. She made doing shots look beautiful. Two things that I don't and wish I did do. I wish I didn't smoke and I don't do shots. And she made them both look beautiful. Everything she did, she made look beautiful. Because she was so beautiful. And in her final moments, I saw her at the care center, and she was hurting, in which I reached down. I gave her a kiss on her head. And I said, "Is there anything that you need?" And she was just about ready to go, and in those final stages, your mind isn't always there, right? And she mumbled something, and I couldn't really understand what it was that she mumbled. And I said, "What?" And she mumbled it again. I got a little bit closer, and I said, "Rosie, I'm sorry. Can you please say it one more time?" And God is my witness. She said, "Can you pay me back my yesterday?" I just looked at her and gave her a kiss on the head. Said, "I'll do my best." Knowing that, of course, I couldn't. But it hit me that in her final moments, she was asking for yesterday. She was asking to have some time back. So you see, it doesn't really matter if, our date is selected for us or not. Maybe my dad survived those events by the pure luck of his will and determination, and the severity of the injuries didn't affect the right organs to shut his body down. Or maybe God did have a date for him, and he's not allowed to go until that date comes. And maybe I have a date, and maybe you do. Rosie was my great aunt. And in her final days, she wanted yesterday. So remember, right now, you're living yesterday. Every second that goes by is your history. That's the value of death. Life. So if you're listening to this right now, I'll make you a deal. You do your best to not fall into the monotony of life and to try to do something every day that's special. And I'll do the same. Thank you all for listening to episode number 87 of the In a Crowded Room podcast. I'll be back tomorrow with more.